And we know what happens when the free press is in danger, is at stake. We know that this is the first step for an attempt of censorship. We have two crises happening here in Brazil. One is the coronavirus crisis. Unfortunately, Brazil is already the second country in number of cases, infections, but also we have this very rising curve of deaths. It's terrible to see that our authorities didn't react, didn't respond to the virus the way they could to prevent this tragic scenario we can see here. So there is this coronavirus crisis, and there is a political crisis that unfortunately our president doesn't help to solve the situation. I mean, he actually is responsible for this chaotic scenario we can see here. So just for you to understand, like Trump, Bolsonaro was obsessed with chloroquine. Because of it, and because the Minister of Health wanted the social isolation, Bolsonaro fired him in the middle of the pandemic. While almost all countries were adopting the social isolation, social distance, in order to reduce the curve, right, and reduce the number of infected people, Bolsonaro was insisting on that this was like a panic, unnecessary panic, and that the COVID was just like a small flu. So people should be working and not staying at home. Our president, he has been acting as a negationist, denying the value of science, denying what researchers say and do about the infection. And because of it, we are seeing the numbers. The government is hiding the information from the press because, unfortunately, Bolsonaro treats press as enemy. What his government did last Friday was to hide numbers of infected people, of dead people, and he didn't start by doing this. The government started by delaying the time of releasing the numbers. So at first was before 5 p.m. so that the journalists could attend the press conference of the first minister and then ask questions based on the numbers. And then when the minister left, they already changed the time. So like 7 p.m. And the number of interviews, the press conferences also decreased. So instead of having like a daily press conference, it started to be like 3 times a week, twice a week. And the interviews started to be also thematical, just one theme, one subject. So if the subject of the day is like the death of indigenous, you can only ask questions about this. You cannot ask questions about the explosion of numbers of COVID among, in the north or northeast or in the south, for instance. So finally, last week, the numbers start to be released at 10 p.m. so that they couldn't be featured on the newscast, the broadcasting, because it was already finished when the numbers were released. So what he was doing was trying to affect the press work in order to not inform people. And finally, last Friday, they didn't release the numbers. So it was already 10 p.m. We were waiting for the numbers. My reporter in Brasilia. Suddenly, I was checking the panel of COVID, and it was off. The website was off. So Marcela, my reporter, told me that other hyperlinks had vanished over last week. So public information, documents about coronavirus were disappearing. So this is a clear evidence that something more dangerous is happening here. Bolsonaro's government is trying to affect the access to public information. You know, information about public health, which can guide the policies for combating coronavirus. And if you don't have a picture of the scenario, how can you fight against the disease? So for us, what happened was much more dangerous than just, you know, some numbers, just change the method of counting deaths and the time for releasing data. No, it was like hiding numbers and attacking a pillar of democracy, which is transparency of the government, you know, of public information that should be public, as you know, as the word implies, public for everyone, for the public, for society, and for the press. Actually, the Supreme Court forced the presidents to release all the numbers. So from yesterday on, they again are now, you know, releasing the numbers. But they said they would change the method anyway, and the method reduced the number of deaths. You just show the deaths that happened on that day, and not the deaths confirmed on that day. The problem is that many deaths are confirmed later, right, because of the tests. So what I'm trying to say here is that the picture is very gray for us. We not only had one minister who left because of Bolsonaro, but two ministers. And now we have a third minister who's like a temporary minister, but it seems that he's going to be in the permanent position. He's a military. And he didn't put doctors in the key positions of the ministry. He appointed only military as well. So now we have a Ministry of Health full of military. There are the qualities of the military in terms of discipline, of planning, of execution. But on the other hand, we are also concerned what a government full of military might mean for democracy. Because in Brazil, we had a very recent dictatorship, which ended in 1984, 1985. This ghost is still inhabit us. You know, we are still concerned when we see military, you know, taking power. And to this extent, we understand that also army changed a lot the mindset. It's not about, starting a dictatorship here. However, the main concern now is how Bolsonaro's attitudes, measures, and the fact that he is being surrounded by military, how this undermines democracy from inside.